Spirit has power, but their power and roles look different, but they're constantly interflowing, intermingling with each other, but they are united together as one. Do you love this? Do you love us doing the waves? Yeah, this is beautiful. All right, and this collective reciprocal communion, what we're doing right now, what the Godhead is doing is called koinonia. And this is our word of the year. In koinonia, no one being is at the center. No one being is at the center. It is love that is platformed, and it is love that is at the center. All right, you guys did so good. Give yourselves a hand. Give yourselves a hand. All right. Yes, nailed it. Okay. So in the center of the communal whole of God, Father, Son, and Spirit, what is at the center? Nobody. Love. Love is at the center, so much so. It is love that binds the Father, Son, and Spirit together, and it is love that is at the center. And this is called koinonia. It is love that entirely motivates them. When Jesus came to this earth, he was sent by the Father out of love. He obeyed in love. He left the comfort and koinonia with God out of love and became vulnerable as we are in love. Jesus was led by the Spirit in love, and ultimately where love took him was to his death. He died in love, because of love, and for love. And the same love that binds God together sent Jesus to now bind us to him. What Jesus' death did on the cross is now we are bound into the koinonia with God. We get to enter into their communal whole that they are. And Jesus was super clear about what the center of this koinonia with God would be. Can you guess? What do you think the center of koinonia, of our relationship with God, would be? Jesus said, you guys, it's like you're listening. Jesus said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and strength, and love who? As yourself. Love would be at the center of our koinonia with God. And the thing is about love is that it's always marked with action. The specific action that God invites us into is the same action that is in the koinonia of God. God binds themselves to each other. God binds us individually to them. And now God asks us to express our love for God by binding ourselves to one another. Quick recap. I'm going to quiz you, see if you heard me. God is bound together by love in what? What's the communal whole? What is that called? Koinonia. Jesus came to bind us together in what? In koinonia. And he asks that we demonstrate our love by God by binding ourselves to one another in what? Koinonia. So we see that koinonia and love are inseparable. And this is what we miss in an individualistic culture. Jesus was saying that loving God is intimately interconnected with loving each other. You cannot say that you love God and not love your neighbor. It's impossible. You can, but it ain't true. You can say it all you want, but it ain't true. That you're going to be wrong. That's right. And what's such a relief to me is that Jesus doesn't expect us to guess what this loving our neighbor looks like. He's not just like, I don't know, go figure it out. He doesn't do that. 1 John 4:19 says, we love because God first loved us. And so Jesus is going to show us exactly what loving each other is going to look like again and again and again. Do you guys remember? Jesus asked Peter, do you love me? Peter says, yes, Lord. What does Jesus tell him? Feed my sheep. Just as Jesus fed the sheep when he was on earth, right? Jesus says, do you love me? Then forgive each other as I have forgiven you. Do you love me? Then seek the interests of others before your own, as I did when I was with you. Do you love me? Then clothe, care for, visit with, and look after the weakest, the most impoverished, and the marginalized among you, just as I did when I was with you. Jesus called us to be bound together in a communal whole. I want everyone right now to lock your arms together like this. Yes. He calls us to be bound together in a communal whole. And this doesn't just mean associating yourself with the church, right? Oh, hey, I go to New Life. That's not what that means. It means binding ourselves to one another in reciprocal relationship, where we are each generously giving our own unique gifts, our callings, and our resources, and we are humbly receiving care. Everyone say, humbly receiving. Humbly receiving. We are humbly receiving care for our needs and our wounds. That is what reciprocity is. Everyone gives all they have, and everyone receives what they need. And that is koinonia. Good job, you guys. I love it. All right. When we're bound to one another, we are interconnected. We're interdependent with and to each other. And so, y'all, if true koinonia is binding ourselves to one another with God, with love at the center, guess what? This means me becomes a we. And we are not alone. We are not alone. You know what? I feel like we need to do it again. Let's bind ourselves together again. All right. We need to sit in this a little more. This is good for us. This is good for us. All right. I love it. If one person is suffering, we all suffer. One person's joy is joy for all. One cannot truly be free until we are all free. That's really different, isn't it? We think of freedom as individual. We think of healing as individual. We think of joy and suffering and pain as individual. But when you are bound together in koinonia with love at the center, your pain is mine. My joy is yours. And guess what happens if someone hurts another person in this whole? Do you think it just hurts that individual? When we're bound together, it hurts all of us. And now it's our responsibility to gently and lovingly correct the person who's doing the hurting, right? Not just for that individual person, but for the whole. Because the individual and the whole can't be separated. We're one. Thank y'all. You did it. When we're bound together in love, we are responsible with and to the communal whole. Healing and restoration is no longer an individual venture. Y'all, can you kids do me a favor? Are you ready? I'm going to take one of the little toy buddies and I want you to go pass it around to everybody. Pass one thing out to everyone. You ready? Set, go. Do it quickly. Go, 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 go. You're participating. Yeah. Go, go, go. Yeah, anything. It could be anything. Anything that's in those things. I want you to pass it out. Thank you. I want you to pass out. No, thank you. I'll take 2. I love it. I got 2. Thank you. Yeah. Does everyone have something? Okay. Okay. All right. I want everyone to hold up what you have. Okay. Now, whenever we are bound together in koinonia, healing is not an individual venture, right? Doing our own work and our own story, that's important. It's deeply, deeply important. But we don't just heal for the sake of healing. When we're bound together, we bring what we have back to the whole, because I can't be fully healed until you're all healed, right? And so it is like the parable that Jesus said of the yeast. Do you remember the parable of the yeast? This woman takes this tiny little bit of yeast and she puts it in together with flour and water. And she starts to fold the yeast in until eventually the yeast is worked through the entire lump of dough. And so when we bring the healing that we've experienced, we're just throwing it in. I want everyone to put in what you have. Put in what you have. We're throwing it all in, right? Everything we've received, the freedom that you've experienced, the healing, the goodness, you're going to bring it and share it. Everything that I've experienced, all of my freedom and healing, I'm going to bring to you too. And if you haven't had freedom in an area and I have, I'm bound to you, right? I can love you. I can walk with you. If you've healed in an area that I haven't, you're bound to me. You can love me. You can walk with me until eventually all that we have gets folded in into the entire lump. And this thing that maybe we were holding that seemed super insignificant, like it didn't matter or like it wasn't enough, it becomes more than enough because it's shared. That is the picture of koinonia, with love at the center. And this kind of love changes the way we see everything. It totally turns an individual culture upside down. It moves us out of isolation and into belonging, because we do not only belong to God, and that is where an individualistic theology stops. I belong to God. But that's not where it stops. We belong to each other. I want you to turn to your neighbor and say, we belong to each other. We belong to each other. We belong to each other. How does that feel? How does that feel? How does it feel to belong to each other? If we belong to each other, how are we going to be lonely? Do you know what I'm saying? We can't be. True koinonia also takes the blinders of individualism off. And we need to acknowledge this is a good thing, but it's also really hard. When we're bound together in the communal whole, we see each other. And the shift from looking at the back of everyone's heads to sitting like this means every single face is seen. And this is amazing. This is amazing, because how many of you know we can struggle seeing ourselves accurately? Is that right? I can be a super unreliable narrator of who I am sometimes. Sometimes I think I'm the worst, right? I struggle to think that I have strengths. I struggle to see my gifts. I struggle to see the good things that I bring to the whole, right? And I can think I'm awesome. And I don't see the lack in my character sometimes. And I don't see the way that I hurt others sometimes. And I don't, essentially, we can be blind to our own shortcomings. But when we are interdependent with the whole, I'm not just having to sit here being like, okay, what's wrong with me? Or how am I awesome? I'm not dependent upon my own self to know these things. Y'all, the communal mirror, or the communal whole becomes my mirror. We become each other's mirror. I can't see behind me. I can't see what I don't see about myself. But y'all can see a lot. You can see me sometimes more clearly than I can see myself. And that is what we need, right? But this is really vulnerable. It's kind of weird sitting like this because you cannot hide. And that's why individualism is so alluring. Because it's much easier to hide when we come and look at one person on a stage in the backs of heads than it is to sit like this. And you can actually, if you've been, I don't know, for me, I went to a church for years where I slipped in, slipped out. Nobody knew I was there. And you can do it for years and never belonging, never being seen, never being known. You can come to a little church like this and never belong, and never be seen, and never be known. There has to be a binding. There isn't just a I show up here, right? There has to be a binding to the whole. Now, if love, the communal whole of God, brings us out of isolation and into koinonia, what do you think love does with power? What do you think the love of God does with power? It turns it upside down. It turns it upside down. Okay, so Jesus said, if you want to be first, you're going to be last. Those who wish to be first need to go last. They need to be last. Those who wish to be in positions of authority will be the greatest servants among you. Those who are the wealthiest among you will become the poorest because they will give all that they have so generously. You see, koinonia that has God's love at the center, it cannot simultaneously center power, privilege, and control. God's love requires us to continually be laying down our power, control, and position. This does not mean there aren't positions of authority in the church. We see God calls people to shepherd and guide the church. But what this does mean is that those who are in positions of authority are actually held far more accountable for their actions. We are all called to love, but those in positions of authority are to especially love, especially serve, especially die, especially be last. We are called to be the most humble. Power among us in this koinonia is meant to look the exact same way that it does in God's koinonia. No one is vying to be first. No one is centered as most important. Instead, we mutually submit to one another. Notice how I'm speaking right now, but I'm not centered or platformed. I'm a pastor. And I still very much am called to be a pastor at this church, but I am also a sheep in the flock. Pastors are just as much a sheep in the flock as everyone else. And pastors need the flock just as much as everyone else. Do you see what it does with power? Now, is this what the church is known for with power in our culture? I don't know, just what do you think the church is known for? Huh? Hierarchy? What was that? Maybe some view it. Yeah, some view, I don't know. I would say that the overarching, if you were to ask the average person who is not a believer in Jesus to say what they think of the church, I think that they would think of an uneven distribution of power, our hierarchy, our hierarchy. And I think what's more is that those in positions of power are actually supposed to be giving their power away, as Jesus did, constantly empowering others, constantly lifting up those who are low, strengthening those who are weak, amplifying the voices of the most marginalized and the silenced. You see, you cannot simultaneously be trying to get ahead and be bound together in love, humility, and reciprocity. It doesn't work. Not in koinonia with love at the center. And Jesus said, there is no greater love than when a person chooses to lay their life down for a friend. No greater love. And this is what Jesus did for us, and this is what we are called to do for each other. To die to ourselves, to generously give to one another, to humbly receive from one another, to lovingly serve each other. And I think what I'm realizing, and maybe you might be realizing also, is that this is actually really, really hard. Does this feel hard to anyone? Or is it just me? Can I get an amen? Yeah. This kind of love is incredibly costly. In fact, Jesus counted on it costing us everything. It is a radical reorientation of who we are. It's going to reorient all our decisions, our time, our careers, how we spend our money. This kind of love will upend our entire lives. And this kind of love is so countercultural. And this is exactly what Jesus is inviting us into. He said that those who truly love him, those who truly follow him, will be known for their love. And so when we come together, we're each bringing who we are individually, all that we are, all that we have, and we vulnerably and humbly offer it to the whole, not in a way that depletes us or strips us, but in a way that actually restores our life so that all may flourish. It's like each of us, if we were to imagine each of us being this individual thread, right? Now, this thread that we are, it's beautiful on its own, but it's really limited. But when we allow God to weave us together and to bind us together in love, we are all strengthened. We are all more beautiful, and we become this warm blanket of love that the world desperately needs in a time where love has grown cold. And the love that is found in true koinonia, it cannot help but burst out into the world. Not because we're screaming a message, not because we have an agenda, but because this kind of love is so radical, so inviting, so beautiful that the world cannot look away. And that is what I wanted to do for us this morning. I wanted to invite us all to get a new picture of what love is. How are y'all feeling? A little nervous all of a sudden? Yeah. It's a lot. It's hard. It's hard to sit this way. It's hard to reimagine what love could look like outside of individualism. It's really hard. But I believe that God's Spirit can empower us to do this well. And so what I would love to do for us this morning is that if we could all stand. And we're going to hold hands because why not? Because we're bound together in the communal hall. And I'd love for all of us who are in the room to do that. So if you, wherever you are, wherever you're standing, Brandon, I see you leaving, brother. I'm just kidding. All right. So, yeah, Bob, can you join us, please? Yeah. So what I would like for us to do, just kind of feeling like what koinonia does in just with our body, like it is literally lifting up the person next to us with the strength and the healing and everything that God has brought us and given us. We use it to lift each other up. And so I just would like for us to lift up each other's arms this morning. And I just want to pray. I just want to pray this blessing over us and that you would receive it together. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face to shine on us and be gracious to us. The Lord turn his face toward us and give us his shalom, his hope, his joy, and love. Amen. Amen.